But we understand, firstly, from being a client and then speaking to thousands of accountants over the years about your experience and what you face in the day-to-day, gives us an insight that, gives us a competitive advantage. And hopefully that comes through in the software that we build.
Welcome back to the Business Behind Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Paul Sweeney, and it's great to have you with us again. We're going to be sharing conversations to help your business grow and thrive, just like having your own board of expert advisors in your pocket. And today we have a great treat for you today. Today's guest is Stuart McLeod. Now, Stuart McLeod is the co-founder of a company called Karbon, which if you're an accountant, you'll know who Karbon is, but you may not know. But he's also been involved in a number of businesses. First started businesses over 13 years ago, many successes, including a company called Paycycle, which he founded in 2009. Now, that name might not ring a bell, but if you're a user of Xero, then you will know Paycycle because Paycycle was sold to Xero and became the basis of Xero Payroll globally in US, Australia, UK, and New Zealand. And then following on from that, Stuart has co-founded Karbon from 2015, where he's been the CEO of Karbon and currently lives in America in Incline Village, Lake Tahoe, with his beautiful wife and 3 kids. So, Stuart, welcome to the podcast.
Paul, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to catch up with you because I remember meeting up with you the first time. I think it would have been about 2009 when Paycycle was very new.
Yep.
And at that time, Xero did not actually have payroll integrated into its service. So there was a lot of new cloud applications starting to evolve, and Paycycle was in my view, the leading edge of payroll for small, medium businesses at the time. So we were very quick to adopt Paycycle.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you.
I can't remember. There used to be an ad about razors on TV where the guy says, electric shavers, and he said he liked the company so much, or liked the razor so much he bought the company. Well, I've got a feeling that Xero liked your product so much they bought the company. So would that be a fair description?
It's kind of how it happened. I can give you the story, but more or less.
Yeah, good. Well, we might delve into that a little bit more, but let's go back before Paycycle. And Paycycle wasn't your first business. It's interesting to see that your first business is actually around contracting for the IT industry. You can share a bit more about that particular business.
Yeah. So Paycycle was essentially scratching an itch for that business. There was no more complexity or intelligence around starting Paycycle than what is a relatively traditional or common way to start a business, which is solving a problem that you see. So my first job was I had a comp sci degree, more or less, from Swinburne, and my first job was at Oracle. That was an amazing learning curve. It's a great company to, for a green, perhaps a little bit overconfident, to 19-year-old or 21-year-old by then to start. And that was a massive learning experience. And then I got a bit silly and I went and did some property stuff and kind of went broke. And to make quick money, Canberra was the place to be. I don't know if it still is, but the contracting rates for a programmer or developer in Canberra were, 50% greater than the rest of the country. And so I went up there and worked for AusAid and met my future co-founder, John. He was silly enough to employ me. And in Canberra, there's this weird concept where, you kind of turn contractors into employees. And, I was exposed to that by being a contractor. And my experience with those vendors was unappealing or unattractive. It was clunky and expensive. And so I started this business called Contract One, which was just on the side. I did one employee. You make 3% of the sort of the gross pay. And we were using MYOB payroll on desktop, obviously. And one day, the dreaded hard drive corruption occurred, and I must have only had like 10 or 15 employees and I could rebuild it, but God, it was a pain. And, it was about 2008, 2009, and, SaaS or software as a service, browser-based B2B solutions were really early on, right? Like Zendesk, Xero, they started in 2006. It's a different world today. Like SaaS has taken over the B2B world. But back then there was very little. And MYOB was showing no progress. I don't know if they have that even now, but God love them. And I went to John and we saw a gap in the market and started building out Paycycle as a way to, move off MYOB to run payroll. That was all we were trying to do. And we thought, that there was a little market for this. And So we built Paycycle, the first version, in John's son's bedroom in Canberra, cold Canberra, and then as that sort of gained traction, for those that know their technology, this is so long ago, we built it in Silverlight, and most of our support was trying to get the plugin working in accountants' offices. There's not many plugins anymore, which is a relief for support people. And then what happened was, so Xero started in New Zealand in 2006, and Wayne Schmidt was employed as the first employee in Australia in 2000, and I want to say 2009, I guess 2008 maybe. Yeah. I could look on his LinkedIn. I haven't seen him in ages. And Xero was gaining traction. Leanne was building the playbook to use accountants, or not use, to partner with accountants to sell Xero. And we were sort of half developing it, half copying the playbook. And so we would often work together with accountants that were buying Xero and, that needed payroll. And then what happened actually is a bit funny. Alistair won't mind me telling the story, but Xero built, I reckon it was about 2010, they built this thing called Pay Run. Do you remember that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah. And so Alistair Grigg rang me. We were working with Xero quite closely. Alistair Grigg, amazing leader and wonderful software guy, and one of the nicest people in the world you'll ever meet. And he rang me one day and said, we're building this payroll thing. The implication was, you're a bit stuffed. And so we panicked, as you would. Xero's building what we built. And then I remember walking through it, when they were just sort of pre-release with Alistair, and I'm like, this is the best thing that's ever going to happen. Because what they were trying to do is, as you would in their environment, a multi-country environment, they wanted sort of this low-level generic payroll, pay run solution. You had to put in your own taxes. And the moment I saw that, is like, we're sweet. Like we have a great solution and this is just going to cause work and hassle and this is actually good for us. And that turned out to be true. I mean, you tell me, the feedback in the accounting community was less than impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. From the accounting perspective, and we're looking at, I don't know how many thousands of accountants, but I think the numbers are about 38,000 accounting firms in Australia at the moment.
Yeah.
But the accountant would view that your accounting ledger, if it didn't have payroll, it wasn't a complete accounting ledger.
MYOB taught the market that was true. And yeah. And then so that sort of crashed and burned, really. Like the feedback was, you're not solving any problems that I've got. You're actually making my life worse. And so what happened was, that took a couple of months to unravel. And then Rod just was in Australia and he rang and said, do you want to have coffee? And he said, well, I said, yeah, sure. And he said, well, I'll buy you. And I said, how much? And he said, $1 million. And I said, 2. And we split it down the middle. And 3 months later, we were done. Remember back then, we'd bootstrapped all of Paycycle. There was no money in the country. No, Blackbird. But Blackbird was sort of just starting then. And they were really the only VC. Nikki and Rick and Bill were amazing. And they sort of created the VC industry in Australia. I remember pitching in this stupid pitching competition that was, we're pitching against B2C companies and like the money in the room probably added up to like $500 in total. Like it was the biggest waste of time. And, luckily the industry has evolved in Australia. It's a different landscape now. But back then we didn't have access to any capital. Nobody thought that payroll online was going to be a thing. And so most of our deal was in Xero stock and the share price back then was like 90 cents or something. So our decision to sell was really came down to one thing, which is where can we create more value by ourselves or with Xero? And I think after we sort of sat on that for a while, like the answer was pretty clear, and I think that's turned out to be true.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Stuart, just want to go back to the beginning. So your reasons for starting those two businesses almost seem accidental.
Yep.
So, which is very different to how a lot of people start in their businesses. So I think what happened was you presented with a problem and you came up with a solution to fix your own problem, and that's something that you could sell to other businesses.
Yeah, it was. I think back then scratching an itch, as it's sort of commonly referred to, was more common than it is today. You see it occasionally, but perhaps, 10 or 20% of the time. But, more often than not now, you go to YC and you beg for money and some take off and a lot don't. And, you just move on to the next thing, how to make more money or how to make money differently. I like the scratch the itch. I like it because, I don't think that this is overly arrogant. I think we've got the best team in the world to build software for accountants because, we've spent so much time with them. We understand the industry, but we're not accountants and we never purport to be. But that understanding came from, living and breathing that, not quite your experience, but as a customer of yours or a client of accountants and being in using accounting software. I mean, I think that gave us the start and the understanding that we needed to be successful. If I built, like, I don't know, insurance software, no idea what the main problems are, right? But we understand, firstly, from being a client and then speaking to thousands of accountants over the years about your experience and what you face in the day-to-day, gives us an insight that, gives us a competitive advantage. And hopefully that comes through in the software that we build.
Mm-hmm. So I think, so you had your own problem, you developed it, but you also developed it in a way that could be sold to other people. So I guess with those first two companies, that the intention really wasn't to start a company, get VC funding and grow it and then sell it.
No.
The intention was really just to solve an immediate problem.
Yeah, and like somebody taught me a long time, never build for a customer of one. Because there's just not enough money in it. So all we're really doing is, maybe at the most naive level, is assuming that, others had the same issues that we did, and it turned out to be true. It was an assumption though. It wasn't, the first company we didn't do a lot of research behind. I just assumed, and it so happened that sort of, timing is everything, right? That Xero sort of was coming along. I don't think. Maybe we're aware of Xero when we started, but that wasn't. I didn't set out to build something to sell to Xero. Not for a single day up until the conversation that I had with Rod. Did I plan an exit? That I've never built businesses with an exit in mind. That slide is blank in our pitch decks.
Mm-hmm. Mm. So I think. Look, timing, people will say, well, hang on, timing was great for you. But I always say that you've got those opportunities presented, but you needed to be in that position where you could take advantage of it. And I think the way that you presented Paycycle as a solution certainly made it available as an opportunity, particularly when you were taking those risks and being on the leading edge there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you create your own luck. And I think there's always a balance, right? Like, So I've never built businesses like this, but some people will go, take today, for example, ChatGPT and the large learning models and all of that stuff. Some people will go out and say, okay, I'm going to crank something that I know I can raise against and I can probably sell in a year, right? And who cares about its purpose or its capacity to improve the world? I know I can flog it because that's where the momentum is at the moment, the gravy train. I've never done that. I don't know. I've never been a stock investor. My property timing was never any good. So I think if you just build businesses that you believe in and that you're enjoying the journey, that's kind of the most, and everything else will take care of itself. And hopefully you get a bit of luck along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So let's take where you are with Paycycle, and you've just sold to Xero, and you've worked through that stage of building up their payroll product in multiple countries. The next stage, though, starting Karbon, what was different about starting Karbon?
Yeah, so good question. Okay, so stepping back a bit, when we sold to Xero, we were employees 91 through 96. It was a great culture. Rod had done such an amazing job. It's very New Zealand. With a bit of a Southern Hemisphere affiliation. It was sort of, the underdog always, that were into it, was sort of in the shadow, in the background, as sort of a model to build a general ledger. That MYOB was really on the nose, like everybody hated receiving those faxes where you get your 10% cost increase every year and it blasted you on. I hope they don't do that anymore. Do you think they do? There's only one fax machine left in Australia.
I'm going to
surely.
confess I haven't dealt with MYOB for many, many years.
Doesn't stop them from faxing you. But anyway, so Rod's timing was great because, accountants and small business, and remember the GST, right? 2000 and Y2K problem, GST coming in
2000.
It was at the same time, was it? Yeah,
Yep.
That had created a big demand for more up-to-date software. Craig Walker created BankRec, which was, probably the last major technological improvement in accounting. I mean, that really massively changed the game, right? So all that was happening. And so, but by the time we left Xero, the company was sort of 1,000 people big. It was much harder to get things done. I'm not a great employee. I'm forever grateful of that journey, and Rod and Alistair and Roscoe and all, the team at that time was fantastic. And Rod gave me the opportunity to, I think they just got sick of me in Melbourne. They said, you can go to London or San Francisco. We chose San Francisco because if you've lived through a London winter, it's depressing. And so we're up here sort of trying to help out the US expansion. But I was getting to a point where I sort of wanted to do something different and start again. And so we did Karbon, I think, because, we chose the accounting industry because it was the most chance of success, right? We're putting our own money in and selling Xero shares to a couple of $1 million to sort of start it up and everything. In the most pessimistic view, it was the least chance of failure because we knew the market. We formed the hypothesis that the CCHs and the Thompsons and the Irises and those vendors were not servicing the industry in the best interest of the customer, you guys. And I believe that remains true today.
Mm-hmm. So accountants, like fairly big market. So even just looking at Australia, like over 38,000 accounting firms. Surely the market in, say, the US and the UK would be larger as well.
It is. Every market is different. We made the assessment early on that we wanted to be a global company because, to get to 100 million run rate in Australia would be dead by the time we get there, right? So we knew that we wanted to be global, and also, selfishly, I wanted a global business, right? We were up here. I love Australia, but we're not moving back. The market's sort of, if you just take the global population, it's sort of 10 times bigger. My dream is just to sort of travel around the world meeting with customers. Last time I did it was post-COVID, is UK, Sydney, San Francisco, and all I have to do is sort of turn up and do market research. It's the best job.
Yeah,
and I don't have to prepare. I know enough, and I enjoy the company and the intelligence in the accounting industry and the work that you do to service the small business economy. I mean, I've had so many great experiences with our client base. So, the point was we can do this. We've got a great team. We've got great knowledge, and it'll be very hard to stuff up. Turns out that, success is not a straight line, right?
Okay, so you mentioned that, and I'm curious because without fail, every business owner or founder comes across some issue or roadblock or crisis in building their business. Are you able to share one of those with us and sort of overcome that to get to where you are today?
Yeah. How long you got? So my biggest stuff up was in 2019 where I sat down and, we were just really struggling for traction. It's like there's sort of some mirages along the way, some quarters were great. And then, we'd sort of every deal, even one or two seats felt like a hand-to-hand combat, it was hard. It was really hard. And every morning I felt like we all had to get up and crank the handle manually. The machine was not going around by itself. And so we pulled out the numbers of accountants again. And I'm like, if we do this out to say 10 years, the revenue even at 50% growth rate or 60, 70 back then, but that was off a small base, right? Looking at the raw numbers and not taking into account, massive network effects, it was going to take 15, 20 years to get to 100 million. I'm like, I don't have the patience. So what we did was, the natural thing to do was we expanded verticals. So we went to market, we changed our website, we spoke to government, we spoke to airlines, we spoke to retail, we spoke to superannuation, we spoke to wealth managers, we spoke to lawyers, and we expanded our marketing to just try and please everybody. And it was a miserable, miserable failure. Like, the accountants hated us because we stopped solving their problems. No other industry took up the product because it was too expensive as a horizontal solution. I distracted engineering to building features that other industries wanted. Our marketing messages were diluted. It was really dumb. And so we pulled the pin on that. Luckily we did it after 3 or 4 months, but it took 9 months to recover. And so we wasted 2019. And then luckily, by the time COVID came along, we'd reverted back. We're very focused on singular use case, and COVID gave us massive tailwinds, and we've been going well ever since.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things there that really picking up is that narrowing down on who your customer is. How critical has that been moving forward, particularly through COVID?
Yeah, I mean, the company would be dead if we'd kept, doubling down on the mistake. At Xero, being involved in the product teams, no criticism of them, but like, the question often comes when you're building features is, who's our customer? Are they lawn mowing, or are they a lawyer? Are they a veterinarian, or are they a hairdresser? Maybe we take it for granted because, we're so used to it, but we know our customers so intimately. And I find it easier to build software or anything really, like, if you know your customer intimately and you're not second guessing who you're building for. I really like that about vertical SaaS.
Yeah, so that's great. And I think the other key thing that really excited me when you mentioned it was you identified the mistake or sort of issue, and you corrected it really quickly. What a lot of businesses do is that they plow money into it, and because they've plowed so much money into it, they want to pursue it until it's successful.
Yeah, it was so obvious that it was a dumb thing to do. Sort of the decision had made itself. Our team, the Sarahs and Johns and Ians of the world came to me and said, mate, we better undo this pretty quickly. And it was obvious. But the only thing I'll add there is, the other side of that coin is doubling down on what works, right? Like, it's easy to pull a mistake. It was sometimes easy to back out of a mistake, but I find it harder, and we're not great at it. I think we're improving. We're doubling down on what works, right? Like, if you find, a feature or a message or, whatever it is, particularly with feature building, right? Like, you've planned your roadmap out, say 6 months, 9 months, 12 months in advance. It's like, this one feature happens to be knocking the socks off everybody. And there's no sort of opportunity to keep developing that, to keep improving it and keep extracting value. I think it's a harder thing to do than to sort of course correct mistakes.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I think one thing I just picked up on there, which I've made some notes because I'm going to do this with our business here, with our accounting firm.
I'll send you the bill, yeah.
Yeah. Is, looking at what is actually working really well. Because sometimes we focus on those things that are not going so well, and we put our energies and efforts into those, but we forget the things that we're doing really well, which our customers are loving, and that's actually the enjoyable stuff and also more profitable. So it's
what's an example in your business?
Well, I think the example is, particularly in looking back over the last couple of years, we've been focused on helping people out of crisis.
Right.
Okay.
Your crisis management accountant. I like it.
Well, we've been doing that, but at the same time, what we've probably dropped the ball on is helping people plan for how they're going to grow their business and how they're going to take advantage of the opportunities, how they're going to grow. And part of it was because the messaging that people wanted was, how do I get my money from the government? How do I make sure I don't have to terminate employees?
Yeah.
But what we didn't highlight enough was, to come out the other side, you've really got to be working on your business now. And I just think back to the GFC, which is 2007, and we had this one particularly amazing success. He had a very small workforce. I think he had 4 employees at the time, and made the decision to go and cherry pick the best employees that were being laid off by his competitors.
Yeah, nice.
Now, he didn't have to work for them, but he cherry picked those employees, got them trained up on his systems. And as soon as things picked up, he was the only business in the area that had capacity to take on the work because he had the team.
He took a bit of a punt on things returning more to normal.
Yeah, and look, he's invested in his team. It's grown. He's got 25 employees now, turning over, eight figures, making seven-figure profits.
Good on him.
So from the base that when we took, but he was a guy that seized on the idea of what actions do I need to take now to grow my business and make it profitable and strong in the future. And I think that's the messaging we didn't do as an accountant back then. And we probably tried to help too many people during COVID. I think that sounds like a bad thing when I say it that way, but we helped some of the wrong types of customers, I think.
You got, like I have a lot of empathy for you and your industry across the world. I mean, you became psychologist, therapist, distributor of stimulus funds for working for the government for no money, crisis PR, like suicide prevention, like you and all your peers everywhere just, were not thrown under the bus, but you sort of bore the brunt, I don't know offense to doctors, nurses, frontline staff for COVID, but I think you were the unsung heroes of COVID. And so on behalf of the world, thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. You're welcome. We kept arguing that we were essential services and we should have been allowed to open, but that didn't.
I think
didn't get received. So, yeah. Hey, now, Stuart. Now, you mentioned a number of names when you're talking about growing Karbon, and you also mentioned having some funds available to grow Karbon. So, what was different about Karbon to, say, Paycycle? So, Karbon, you've got some funds available, so you're not bootstrapping, and it seems like you got some other key people involved right from the beginning. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, we had our own money out of the Xero stock to throw in, and that makes a world of difference. We managed to sort of stuff it up and spend most of it, but we recovered from that and we got back on track. But I wouldn't put this in the same category as the one I described before. But we spent about sort of 6-9 months building US tax, and sometimes you do have to sort of, experiment. We probably experimented for a bit too long on that. But, once we'd sort of course corrected and realized that was a silly thing to do, we were on track. But we spent probably too much money on that experiment. And so, by the time we had a product that was ready to go to market, we're kind of a bit low. Our fundraise, like one of the reasons that, I've always been attracted. We moved to San Francisco. I've always sort of, been interested in tech, and I thought as a Melbourne boy growing up, like San Francisco was sort of the center of the universe. And we arrived when San Francisco was sort of, on the up and up, and before it sort of shut the bed a bit. But one of the reasons we're here is we should be able to raise money easier. That's eventually turned out to be true. Taking our A from 5 Elms, Joe Onofrio is amazing. And then, we got our business into a situation where we were able to be really, really attractive. We had very conservative capital expenditure. We got to a situation where we weren't spending much money to grow really strongly. COVID was tailwinds. Our retention is world-class. Our LTV is big. Our CAC is low. All the numbers lined up, and expert in B2B investors. Like we were able to attract probably the best B2B SaaS investor in the world in Dave Wan out of TCV and now Tidemark. And, that was a really satisfying moment in that we'd built a business that was attractive to somebody as intelligent as he is. And, that relationship is great. We've loved his input. He's really added value to our organization. And so I guess to answer your question is I like being up here where the money is. Like in Australia, if you go around to every VC, probably only take you a day or two. Like there's just, so much money up here, and that can be a bad thing. But, as long as you use it the right way, it's appealing.
So you didn't actually get that VC funding, though, until you've had an established product and an established market or customer base. Yeah.
But Nikki and Bill actually at Blackbird back then believed in us, and for that I'm enormously grateful. Gavin Appel will tell you the story that, I was jumping on the table when they agreed to sort of fund a seed of $1 million, and like $1 million back then, added a third to our funds, and that gave us another 12, 15 months. And that was amazing. And I'm forever grateful that they saw something in us that we would be successful. From an investment point of view, those three have just been amazing. It was weird. I think, look, it's changed a little bit, but, in 2004, we're 15, 16, like the VC mantra is, massive TAM. And, that's why DevSec, DevOps can attract so much money, and now AI and ML and all that stuff. But, the accounting industry, you have to argue pretty hard to suggest that it's even, maintaining a consistent TAM, right? Like it's actually declining because I love you all, but it's predominantly white males that are heading to the golf course in the next few years. And for everyone that goes out, you only get one back in out of college. The industry is not growing. And so VCs look at that and say, well, why would I invest in that when I can go and invest in developer tools that, there's 5,000 new developers coming out of, Udemy every day, right? So it's still hard to raise money for non-sexy, non-growing TAM businesses. Like it just is, you really have to be smart about, your realistic possibilities about, how much money you can attract to the business. If you can demonstrate that you got unlimited growth, you're going to attract more money. Then our growth is limited to the rate that accountants take up software, which is, not as fast as developers or, security or what else, Airbnb, like all the resulting sort of industries that have come out of Uber and those types of things, right? Like you can demonstrate massive and growing TAM.
Yeah. That's interesting. If you were to go back and advise yourself back in those early days, is there any key message you'd give to young Stuart?
Oh, don't be an overconfident, arrogant prick. I think I've learned that lesson the hard way sometimes. I hope that I'm a wiser, more empathetic leader, and that I will never be overconfident and be forever grateful of all the people that have helped along the journey. I think I was just a bit young and dumb and kind of perhaps had a little bit of success too early and got ahead of myself and done a lot of work to be the leader that I want to be. What else would I do? I don't have many regrets. Coming up here, we love where we live. I think I would do all that. What else would I say? Just take a breath sometimes, like we've spent too much money too early. Don't rush everything. It's all right. The sun will come up and it'll keep coming up. And, we're 9 years in. It's like if you had told me 9 years ago that it'd take 9 years to sort of get to 15, 20 million, I'd do things different. I'd settle into more a marathon pace, not 10 sprints, I think that would be the advice. Like, it's okay. It'll take 3 times longer. And people say that, but you don't internalize it.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, I'm really appreciative that you're giving that kind of feedback because I see so many, founders starting up businesses expecting to get the VC funding within a matter of months, expecting to grow to, a 7-figure turnover and expecting to have an exit within 3 to 5 years. So it's, sobering, but also helpful to see how successful businesses can be and how solid, but that it's not, as you said, it's a marathon. In most cases, it's not a sprint. We focus too much on, I shouldn't say overnight successes because we know there's a lot more work goes behind it and probably a few failures before they get to that overnight success. But the focus is on, particularly where I've seen in the startup market in Australia is a lot of people are focused on that quick win rather than that long-term strategy.
You just don't believe all the bullshit that you read. If you read TechCrunch, it's like, how easy is this, right? Day after day, there's, tens of millions of dollars raised. It just, for the masses, and I'll put myself in that bucket, it just doesn't work like that. So, my biggest strength is perseverance and resilience. Come hell or high water, we would have got to this situation. And so, I'm very, very grateful for all the people that have helped along the way.
And look, we're sort of short on time. I appreciate you giving up your time to speak to us. It's been really valuable and some great lessons that you've shared. We haven't touched on the team that you've got, which is an amazing part of Karbon, and as a user of Karbon, your team and what they do is an amazing part of the journey and the customer experience, the way that's been developed. And I'm not saying that lightly because, as you know, we're the opposite of the accountants. We're a bit on I won't say the bleeding edge of tech, but we're sort of leading adopters. We use quite a lot of the cloud technology. I think we were early on with Paycycle and Xero, and we've jumped on very early on a number of products that have solved the itch that we've had in the business. And I'm not a software developer, so I'm more than willing to pay for somebody else to have developed that tool to save my problem. Just to put the icing on the cake, you started two businesses basically as an accidental entrepreneur in a way to solve a problem, or to solve problems that you were facing. And now we've got Karbon, which is a global company. You've got, I've lost track of how many employees you've got. You're coming up to 10 years, which is a long time for any business. And you've got good, solid investment from a range of people. And you're one of the established names in the accounting or the suppliers to the accounting profession. It's a great success story, but not an overnight one, I must say.
Certainly not, no.
But it's also really good to hear the journey that you've taken, and I guess the honesty you've given us in terms of it's not all champagne and party. There's a lot of hard work along the way. So
Definitely. Yeah. You touched on the team, and it's such an important part of our culture, and it's something that we thought about from day one. And the people that have helped me on this journey, the Sarahs, the Paxes, the Ians, the Johns, the Tims. We'll put some links in the. Don't poach them though. We'll put some links in the. But what we're able to do is create a customer first culture, and that hopefully shines through in the product. And when we did Karbon X, it was the most wonderful experience. Like the love in that room in June last year, where we had 120 odd customers come and just share a bit of a celebration. We'd raised our B and launching some products and things, and it was so wonderful to sort of see the care and attention that we pay to your problems is not accidental. It's really deliberate. And the team that has come together on this journey, really cares deeply about you and making your life better because it has a global impact. And hopefully that shines through. I've got a huge amount of love for my team, and I'm forever grateful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, key to success, and it'd be fair to say that Karbon would not be Karbon if it was just left to Stuart.
No, definitely not. It'd just be a whole swearing mess.
Thank you, Stuart. So you mentioned we'll put some links to some of these stories and resources that you've mentioned in our conversation today. We'll put those in the show notes, and they'll also be available on the businessbehindyourbusiness.com website. Check those out. Check out some of the past episodes as well. And look, if you've really enjoyed this conversation as much as I have, then please share this with somebody else that needs to hear it. Another business owner. We want to share the love. We want people to grow, and this is some great stories about how to grow a business and the patience and perseverance that you need to do it successfully. Stuart, thank you incredibly for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and thank you for all the work you've done and the customer experience you've provided as a user. But thank you for sharing your experience with us today.
Paul, it's been an amazing pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very grateful and honoured that you'd share your time with me, and thank you to your audience who can share, hopefully get something out of our journey.
Oh, absolutely. I'm absolutely certain they will. And thanks again. Stuart, we'd love to have you back on at another time to tap more into your experience and particularly around that whole idea of team and culture. That would be great to talk to you about. So
anytime, Paul.
Fantastic. I look forward to that. Thank you again, Stuart.
Cheers, mate.